Good morning. It's Sunday, August 23rd, 2020. It's a beautiful day out here. A little bit misty looking. It's supposed to get sunny later. Here's my almost regular report. I mean, I've kind of cut down on doing these reports because I think there's a lot of politicization of the coronavirus. And I just it gets to be very difficult and complicated to keep on doing this because people want to use the data for their own political reasons or whatever, and that's not what I'm doing this for. I'm only doing this to help people understand what's going on. As a professor of epidemiology, and you can hear a lot of cars driving by, people are out and about. It's early Sunday, 7 o'clock in the morning, and people are out already doing things. So, my job is to just read the data, present the data, and give what my beliefs are related to the data, not transcending the data in any way. If you ever read a manuscript from somebody who published a paper, peer-reviewed paper, you get dinged if you go off the grid, as they say, right? To try to present something that goes beyond the results of the data. So I never want to do that. I just want to talk about the data themselves as they present themselves. So if you look at this figure here, this is this epidemiologic curve, or epi curve as we call it, and it's broken down by region of Pennsylvania, and the southeastern region in purple. Piper is being a little bad right now, yelling out. He can pronounce, this is my parrot, he can pronounce every word really well except for ready. And that's what he's saying right now. I don't know what's wrong with the word ready for him. But if you look at the data, you'll see that there was a large increase early, as we saw that, which is very typical of these epi curves. And then there was a decline, and then we saw a jump again late in July through early August, and we're kind of like leveled off basically at this point. So this is an important figure, and the southwest of the state also had some issues too. So that's what I want to show you here. If we go into this nice graphic that we have, I love it. It shows you a lot of different issues in the state. Like right now, there are 124,802 supposedly confirmed cases. Now, the reason I say supposedly is because, again, testing is very complicated, and testing depends on sensitivity and specificity of the test. So just because you test positive doesn't mean you're positive. Just because you test negative doesn't mean you're negative. So it depends on how well these tests do at actually confirming negatives and positives. That's a property of the test that's being used, but we'll just have to take it as being a confirmed. There's also 3,627 probable cases. So if you live with somebody who's confirmed and you feel like you had symptoms, you're considered a probable case. We've had 7,576 deaths in Pennsylvania. If we look at the deaths, that's in white. So this curve initially mirrored what you see in the cases per day, although later on slightly does, but it's kind of leveled off and it's gone down to very low levels. So we're not seeing a lot of deaths now. That's a good thing. I'm so happy about that. In terms of hospital preparedness, I only cover the data that I think are important for you to understand. In terms of hospital preparedness, we have at this moment 487 coronavirus cases in the hospital. Out of all those cases, right, 84 are on ventilators. Now, again, I remember somebody saying, yeah, but ventilators are dangerous, and that's potentially true. I mean, it depends on how they're used and how they're monitored, because a lot of people especially in areas where there's lower income individuals, there is a little bit less monitoring, sadly, than there are in private hospitals. So you probably don't have as many deaths in the private hospitals as you do in the more affluent hospitals. And we're not using that many, although it's really hard to see here. We're using at this moment 1,016 ventilators, but only 84 of those are for coronavirus. So those are used for other reasons. In terms of proportion of beds available, and this is for everything, not just because of coronavirus, but in our hospitals in Pennsylvania, 24.3% of ICU beds are available. The ones that are more important, let's see, for coronavirus, probably this one, airborne isolation, we have 43.7% availability. So every week, excuse me, every week Pennsylvania publishes a mortality report. So you can always, so it says view the weekly report issued. So this is mortality, is death, right? So you can look at this. This was published on August 27, 2020, so we can see what's going on here. So at that point, we had 7,558 deaths. You can see how many males and females, or you'd expect them to be pretty similar there. We have a lot of deaths, disproportionate amount of deaths among African Americans given the small population of the state, 12% of the state. This equals probably around 21%. I'm not doing a formal count. I guess I should probably. Let me see. What's the total? We had 7,558, 7,558. So let's do this. Clear. 15,993 divided by 7,558. It's been at this level, 21% for a long time. So that's a disproportionate amount. So in raw numbers, you have more whites than African Americans dying from the coronavirus, but you have to look at it relative to the proportion of the population. So this is that's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. And in terms of where most of the deaths are, last calculation I did, we had like 93%. Because last week I did this, 93% of individuals above 60, the deaths were among, 93% of all deaths were among people above 60. Sorry, it took me a moment to spit that out. So it means only 7% of the deaths occurred among individuals lower than 60. So that's again good news. Two, bad news. One thing I'll say about people dying who are older. So if somebody died at 60, now they may have a comorbid condition. So comorbid means they have some other condition. In fact, we can look at the data here. It said approximately 37% of the death did not include comorbid data. So that means 63% of all deaths had some kind of comorbid condition, right? Like whether cancer or heart disease. I think there's a better breakdown. Oh, here it is. So most of the people had dementia. That's talking about the age, right? The age of those individuals. A lot of hypertension. So if you have high blood pressure, this is not a good thing. Diabetes, COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, etc. And as we go down after that. What the interesting thing here is that while we see there's a lot of dementia, that means those individuals are really just living in body, not so much in mind. But for those who are not, who are older and die, so if somebody's 80 years old, you can say, well, that person had a good life, and that person, we mourn her death or his death, but that person had a good life, at least they lived 80 years. The only issue there is that what if that person could have lived 90 and is of sound mind and could have produced something wonderful during that time? So we should never just take any death for granted. I don't care how old an individual is. And let's see, one other issue I just want to deal with this week really quickly is the issue of colleges returning and closing and shutting down or being online. Universities are doing the best they can, and their administrations are doing the best they can to make the appropriate decisions. A lot of people are very, very scared of the coronavirus, and as you can see, there's reason to be fearful. What's going to be interesting to see is for those universities that remain open, what happens? Like, let's say if we saw, like this weekend, Penn State administration was very angry at students for partying outside the freshman dorms. I saw the same in Syracuse, Purdue University, University of Connecticut. There was all this partying when students came back on campus as if there's nothing happening, nothing going wrong at all. So if those universities shut down, because a lot of universities like University of North Carolina and Notre Dame shut down once they started seeing cases, shut down and went online. So we can't really see what happens other than that, and knowing what the threshold is for shutting down. But for those that stay open, we get to watch them and monitor them, and actually we get a natural experiment. Natural experiment is something that occurs, so we can look at pre to post data, pre-occurrence to post-occurrence data. Normally we'd have to do that in some kind of an organized experiment, but here we get the natural experiment. So this is going to be interesting to see what happens. And do these universities shut down? It'll tell us actually if decisions were wise or not wise. So I'm very, very curious in seeing what happens. They're just following this. Okay, if you guys have any questions, post questions here, in comments, and I'll definitely answer them. Hope everybody has a wonderful and safe day, and wear your masks, whatever you do. Cover your nose with your masks.